Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Alright, so let's hear Tom Perez talk about his values. The Unity Tour kicked off recently. I think it was a couple of days ago. I'm going to show Perez's and Sanders' speech, or at least portions of those speeches. One of the things I want you to look out for is the disparity between the two. It is a massive disparity between the two. Sanders is Sanders. Sanders is Sanders. He's the guy that you love. The man gets up there, opens his mouth, and you are perfectly clear on the things he wants to accomplish and on what's in him, what drives him. It's clear as day. Perez, not so much. Not so much. Perez's speech was mostly platitudes with emptiness going through the entire speech. It's amazingly ridiculous. It's one of those things where when you see a real quantity, particularly when they're on side together, when they're on stage together, it makes the unreal quality that much more apparent. It's almost like just by virtue of comparison, this thing looks so much more inferior than the other thing, the real thing to the right. There's another aspect of this. Perez is the DNC chair. Bernie Sanders went last, meaning Perez was the opening act for Bernie Sanders. As you watch this, tell me if you get the same feel that I did. Part of the feel that I got was, all right, Sanders, go out there and get those people back into the party. Everything was geared around Sanders. It may have been a unity tour, but ultimately it is very clear that Sanders was the emphasis and Sanders was the focus. Get those people back into that party. You got your marching orders, company man. Let's take a look at it.
And so, that's what I love most about my job. And the reason I ran for this job is because when we have strong state parties everywhere and we elect good progressive people from the school board to the Senate, and we're helping you to enact programs like the Opportunity Agenda, good things happen to good people. That's what happens when you have strong parties. That's what happens when you have strong partnerships. And that is why I ran for this job. Now, I know we have a lot of work to do in the Democratic Party. We have to earn your trust. When we earn your trust by putting our values into action, folks. And I learned a little bit about earning trust from a guy named Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy was my mentor, and I had the privilege of a lifetime working for Ted Kennedy. He taught me what it was like to be a progressive. He taught me about the importance of making sure we help the common man and the common woman fight for fairness, fight for economic security. He taught me what my values were as a Democrat and what our values are moving forward. And it was the privilege of a lifetime. And I was at the Steelworkers Conference last week. And I've been making house calls because I want to hear honest feedback. And people said to me, you know what, Tom? I don't know what the Democratic Party stands for. And I accept that criticism. And I'm here to tell you what we stand for. We believe in a government and economy that works for everybody, not just the powerful special interest. We believe that America works best when it works for everyone. We believe that we must respect the dignity of every person. We believe that zip codes should never determine destiny and that every single person is gifted and talented. We believe that our diversity is one of our greatest sources of strength. It's something to embrace, not fear. Somos los Estados Unidos. No somos los Estados divididos.
So here's a question. When did you start believing that? When did you start believing that? Let's have a come to Jesus. Government is for everybody, not the powerful. America's works best when it works for everybody. Respect dignity of the process, or respect dignity of every person. Every person. All right? That's a lofty goal. Zip code should not determine destiny. Diversity is a strength. What I'm asking you, Tom, is when did you start believing this? When did your party took these as the values, take these items as your values? Because understand what I'm getting at. Multiple Democrats was asked the exact same question. What do you believe in? What are your values? What does the Democratic Party stand for? And over and over and over again. That was never an answer. Donald Brazil had said the Democratic Party wasn't talking about income inequality, jobs, wages. It wasn't talking about those things until Sanders got into the race. She's right. You guys weren't. You weren't talking about the poor. You weren't talking about expansive ideas. Is she lying? I don't think she's lying. I think she's telling the truth. Now, let's fast forward. She didn't know what the Democratic Party stood for. If I'm not mistaken, Nancy Pelosi was also asked. It was one Democrat after the next. You could not answer that question. That was after the election. Now you're standing on stage screaming about your values, and you're saying this is what the Democratic Party stands for. How come those people didn't have this list that you so suddenly have possession of? When did these items become the values of the Democratic Party? That's what I want to know. Because you must understand my skepticism here. This seems a bit self-serving. It seems a bit self-serving. It seems like you guys have been spending a lot of time painting yourself progressive, mentioning Bernie Sanders' name every time you could get the breath out. I'm here with Sanders. I'm on stage with Sanders. I'm on stage with Sanders. Bernie Sanders back there. Give it up for Bernie Sanders. He's coming next. He's coming next. I need you to know that I'm so on stage with Bernie Sanders. Yes, we get it, dude. You're on stage with Bernie Sanders. That's great. You want to paint yourself as progressive because you realize that the Democratic Party is seen with scorn at this point. So you're looking for any out that you can instead of having the honest conversation of why you lost and why those 50 million people left. That's what this boils down to. This Unity Commission is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We're not united. There is a difference between what a Democrat is and what progressives are. You can conflate those terms as much as you want. You can try to confuse and scam those people as much as you want. Sanders can be in on that scamming as much as you want. That doesn't necessarily change that what you're doing are scamming people. You are scamming people. And it damn sure doesn't change the substance of what you represent. It is damn sure not these. You understand that you were in the last government, right? Like, this is not a conceptual thing. It's not something where nobody knows your record, or at the very least nobody knows your party's record. You had 8 years in that house. And yes, I get it. Obama was so weak. I mean, he couldn't do anything. He was just the president of the United States. I get it. He was just the president of the United States. That's all he was. He couldn't necessarily affect the things that he wanted to affect. The question becomes, if this is the list that you guys are working on, government works for everybody when it's not just for the powerful. You gave 95% of the wealth to the top 1%. I keep saying that because that stat is mind-blowing to me. That was under a president you kept calling progressive, or at the very least they kept calling progressive. Respect the dignity of everyone, period. They've been shooting people in the face, cops, all across the country. All across the country. Yes, you sent the Justice Department to do an investigation. That's not the same thing as stopping people from being shot in the face. That's not respecting the dignity of every person. In fact, when that college professor got locked up by that asshole at his own door, you came out talking about Obama, saying, yeah, the cop behaved stupidly. And within a day or two, you ended up coming back with your tail between your legs, calling for some dumbass beer summit. You think the dignity of that particular professor was respected at his own door when he was being harassed and locked up for no reason at all? I don't think so. I don't think so. And it's not necessarily that I think the federal government can have an iron hand on this front. I'm making the point that if you're talking about respecting the dignity of every person, the militaristic police force that we have, in some degree, comes from the militarism that we export all across the world. When that equipment comes back into the country, you have these Barney Fifes all across the country, driving around in military Humvees as if they're on some kind of desert plane. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. You can't have respect for the dignity of every person if you're treating the populace as if it's some kind of hostile territory. And even if you take it beyond that point, let's take out this whole angle of cops and just talking from the federal government standpoint. Look at the number of people you arrest and you put in prison. Now, Obama could have came out, even if we're talking about incremental change, tiny incremental change. If you wanted to respect the dignity of people and not having those people being arrested for pot or nonviolent offenses, you could have changed the scheduling on that drug. You could have changed the scheduling. What I'm getting at is these things are so ambiguous. And even with the ambiguity, there are things that they could have did in the prior administration to try to fulfill any of these objectives to any consequential way. They weren't done. And now that you've lost your job, you're out here trying to pay a bill. Good luck with that. And as for diversity, let's talk about diversity. So, WikiLeaks. I did this story a while back. This is commondreams.org, actually. Labor Secretary Tom Perez, who has spent a considerable amount of time boosting Hillary Clinton's campaign, offered advice in February on how to change the narrative so people of color were discouraged from supporting Bernie Sanders. That doesn't sound like diversity at all to me, Tom. That sounds like the opposite of diversity. The advice was sent in an email to Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta, which was published as part of a third batch of emails released by WikiLeaks. This is Tom Perez. Nevada is an opportunity to fight back on so many levels, Perez argued. First, the current storyline is that she does not connect well with young voters. Given that Nevada is far more demographically representative of America, I'm confident that Hillary Clinton can do well with all African Americans, Latinos, and Asian Americans. Don't forget the sizable population of Asian Americans in Nevada, including Filipinos. That's nice for them to notice. Perez continued, Emmy and the team have come to a plan to attract all minority voters. When we do well there, then the narrative changes from Bernie kicks ass among young voters to Bernie does well only among white liberals. That's a different story. And a perfect lead in South Carolina, where once again we can work to attract young voters of color. So I think Nevada is a real opportunity, and I would strongly urge Hillary Clinton to get out there within a couple of days. That's amazing. Now, understand what he's saying. He's trying to essentially weaponize identity. He's trying to weaponize identity. So the guy who's on stage screaming about his values and screaming about diversity was given advice for a candidate to tar a man as quote-unquote the white liberal candidate, which wasn't true, but that's what they wanted to tar him as, purely because they thought politically, if he gets that stigma associated with him, it would drive away minorities from voting for him. That's the opposite of diversity, Tom. That's the opposite of diversity. You're hopping around on stage talking about your values. This is part of the reason why I'm asking you, when did these values come to pass? When did these values come to pass? It seems a bit opportunistic. It seems like you want to paint yourselves as progressives as fast as you possibly can, scream Bernie Sanders' name as often and as loud as you possibly can, and come up with values that are vague, immensely ambiguous, in order to say we're progressives, without necessarily nailing down any particular point that you could be held to later. I've said it before, I don't like Tom Perez. He's phony as all hell. So, let's keep going.
We believe that when unions succeed, America succeeds. We believe that when unions succeed, the middle class succeeds. We believe that health care is a right. It's not a privilege. We believe that nobody who works a full-time job should live in poverty in this country. We believe that when women succeed, America succeeds. We believe that our nation can and must be strong and compassionate. And you know what, folks? We believe, as Congresswoman Pingree said, that climate change is a real threat. It is not a hoax. And you know what? We believe that the facts matter, and the term alternative facts should be an oxymoron. Someone get that memo to the Trump folks.
Again, it's like, when did you start believing us? When did you start believing us? And why? Do tell, Tom. Why? Why don't your beliefs filter out into the real world? Why? That's the question. You keep saying we. I don't know who we is. I'm still in the dark on who we is. If you're trying to say that we are the Democrats, okay. If you say that you believe in climate change, all right, let's put that down as two. If these two things are given, let's step into the climate change one. If you believe it, you believe the science, and the science is saying this is like an asteroid that's going to hit the planet, then how on earth do you put up a candidate who's selling fracking? I don't understand. Tom, do you get what I'm coming from? You're saying that these are your values. I'm asking you, when did these start being your values? That's the first question. The second question is, if you're saying, I believe that we're the party who believes in climate change, great, that's a gold star, Tom. Gold star. All right? But again, because you believe in it, what are you going to do about it? What are you legislatively going to do about it? These guys are saying the world is at stake. There's a bomb on a bus. There's an asteroid about to hit the planet. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to push for a green energy revolution? Whoever this we is, are you guys going to say, we believe the science, because we believe the science, we believe this is drastically important that we do something about it. Ergo, we are pushing for a green energy revolution that will bring jobs to this country and, at the same time, combat climate change. In addition to just having the byproduct of cleaning up our environment. Those things go together logically. Saying we believe in climate change, we accept the scientists that it's an asteroid that's going to hit this planet, but we still like our fracking. Fracking is still okay for us. That's okay. That's okay. That's environmentally acceptable because we're moderates. Climate change cares about our moderation. It's like, no, dude, it doesn't. It doesn't care about your moderation. Stop telling me the things that you believe and telling me the things that, how are you going to get those beliefs? This is so thin. This is immensely thin. There's no there. It's aggravating to listen to this. It's literally, it's almost like drinking a sugary snack. There's no nutrients. There's no nothing in it. It's just one platitude after the next that doesn't mean squat. It doesn't mean squat. He doesn't want to be held to any particular thing that he may say. He doesn't want to create any weird policy and be held to that particular standard. So how do? You go through an entire speech without saying anything. You give platitudes, you give subjectivity, you give words that can be ambiguous and can mean all sorts of things, so much so that they end up meaning nothing at all. That's a speech. That's essentially this entire speech has been. Telling me about your values doesn't tell me anything. Telling me about policy tells me what you're going to do. I may disagree with that policy. I may even disagree that you yourself are going to accomplish it, but at the very least you nail down something specific of, this is what we mean. Yes, we believe that everybody should have health care. It should be a universal right, and we want to push through single payer to cover that. Yes, we believe everybody should be able to go to school without being put into massive amounts of debt. So yes, we're going to find a way to come together to help pay for school. There's a difference between articulating a problem and articulating a solution you want to push through, as opposed to articulating a wish list and moving on to the next item on your wish list. Those things are different. Those things are immensely different from one another.
Because they're not getting it, folks. And I had the privilege, as I said, of working for Ted Kennedy. And I remember vividly the story he told of Bobby Kennedy. Back in the 60s, he was at a rally with Cesar Chavez, organizing farm workers in California. And he said at that time, and it is so resonant today, they stood at a defining moment in history, a moment that he called the point of difficulty and danger that would determine our country's future. And he went on to say that when your children and grandchildren take their place in America, taking good jobs at good pay, when you look at them, when you look at all of them, you will tell them, I was there. I did this. I marched. That's what Bobby Kennedy said in the 60s. And that is what I say to you today. You are in the process of doing this. You are in the process of marching. And when we are united, we are strongest as a party, as a nation, as a resistance movement. So whether you are a Republican in this room, a Democrat, an independent, I am here to say thank you for being part of the resistance. Thank you for putting your values into action. Thank you for causing good trouble. Let's cause good trouble together, because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it indeed bends toward justice. But I will tell you this, my friends, it does not bend on its own. Let's bend it together. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
I hate platitudes with a passion. I really do. I absolutely do. This entire speech has just been this flowery rhetoric of vague resistance, vague talk about values that I still, to this day, have no clue what those values are. Yeah, all this stuff is just rhetoric. And then even the ridiculous situation of him coming out. Let's give it up for our guy, Bernie Sanders, who's going to be speaking right after I'm speaking. But I just want to say his name because I want people to associate Tom Perez with Bernie Sanders. I mean, that's essentially what's taking place. Sanders is the focal point. It's very clear that they're trying to paint themselves in a particular light. So, I'm a progressive. That's essentially what they're doing. I'm on stage with Bernie Sanders. He's a progressive. I'm on stage with him. I'm also a progressive. I'm talking about progressives. I'm talking about these Democrats over here who are also progressives, who's going to get elected. I mean, it's one thing after the other. He's using this term as if it's completely interchangeable with Democrats. Now, what he's saying, however, is no there there. There's no there there. It's just platitudes. It's empty rhetoric using the term progressive. It's almost like if you had to do a term paper. And in the term paper, you run out of words. Let's say the teacher says 1,000 words. You get to 600 words, and you don't have anything else to say. So you're adding in and, the, but, if, they. All of these space filler words. You may add more adjectives. You may add some other fluff that doesn't really mean anything to the original main point. But you got to get the 1,000 words, right? I mean, in this particular case, he just wants to be on stage with Sanders. This speech, I guess it's supposed to be like a rally, but he's all over the place. He's cussing one moment. Another moment, he's jumping around, like all hyped up, but it's like fake hyped up. It's not somebody who's extraordinarily excited. It's somebody who's trying to gin themselves up. At other times, he's trying to be real sober when he's talking about the Narcan thing. It's absurd. This is painful to watch. This is absolutely painful to watch. I don't like Tom Perez, and part of the reason I don't like him, he is phony as all hell. The speech is ridiculous. And when Sanders comes out, you will see the disparity between those things. You will see the absolute disparity between those things. These quantities are not the same. And yet, by having those two quantities on stage together, it does add gleam to this other lesser quantity. Watch the whole thing. Watch the whole thing that Tom Perez does. And at the end of it, try to articulate what the hell was Tom Perez talking about. The only concept that you're going to get is Tom Perez wants to get across this idea of unity. They're at a unity convention. If you have to tell me that strenuously, if you need to go to 50 states to scream into every microphone that you can find that you're united, you're not united. You're not united. And again, I make the point, as I made before, your only door is not this, not jumping around stage like a maniac. It's being honest and saying, yes, we cheated you. Yes, we're sorry for cheating you. We're going to do better by instituting policies that's going to prevent such. You will not get everybody. But at the very least, it would assuage people's annoyance at you telling them that they're constantly wrong about the cheating that took place, particularly when it's plain to see in black and white what took place. This is pretend. This is fantasy. Sanders is helping you engage in this fantasy. The Sanders fantasy is going all the way back to the Democratic Convention when Sanders made some kind of deal to decide to work with the Democrats. Hence, I would imagine that working with the Democrats, outreach coordinator, is why he's on this stage right now. One of these quantities are not like the other. Tell me if you can tell which one is real.